For quite a long while, I struggled to figure out a way to do consistently great creative work. But finally, I think I found the formula, the secret, if you will, which is not really a secret, but let me explain. And in my opinion, it's about balance, like yin and yang. And what I mean is, on the one end, there was a time when I was super disciplined. And by the way, let me just tell you now, this is the balance between discipline and playfulness. And there was a time a couple of years ago when I was too disciplined. And you might be wondering, how can you possibly be too disciplined? I thought discipline is a really good thing. And yes, discipline is great. But the thing is that when you're disciplined to the point that you just force yourself to do everything and you completely ignore your feelings, you ignore what you love, you ignore your purpose and passion and curiosities and all these things, you just force yourself to do something because you think you have to do it, that's just ridiculous and over the point. Over the top. And on the other hand, the other thing is playfulness. And more recently, because I learned that kind of the secret, in my opinion, to all these geniuses like Albert Einstein and Darwin and Leonardo da Vinci and all these other geniuses, the reason that they became so incredible and great is because they pursued what they truly loved. And for that reason, their work for them looked like work to others, but felt like play to them. And that's what I mean when I say playfulness. Basically, just doing things for their own sake and literally just working like a child. Because often the best, most creative work comes out of us when we literally just work like a child, with no restraint, without constraining ourselves. And this is, I think, something I kind of learned or heard from Rubin. He talked about this a lot. Basically, when inspiration strikes, you just treat it as holy. It's holy. You follow the spark. And I believe that following the spark is very, very important and fundamental, both in the micro and in the macro. What I mean is, in the micro, so in the moment when inspiration strikes, you get an idea, instantly you want to note it down or work on that thing. And also in the macro, so day to day and week to week, month to month, year after year, I think it's very, very important just to follow your curiosities, your passions, and your purpose, not what you think you should be following. And by the way, a note on the whole following the spark thing. I found that when you get an idea and you don't instantly note it down, or if, for example, like the idea I had for this video, if I noted down the idea for this video, sorry, I've done loads of filming today and I think I've already used up so much of my clear speaking or something, I don't know. But if I found that if I just note down an idea and I don't work on that thing within a day or two, then later on it becomes work. I no longer really want to do it, and I don't really have that little flame, that spark, or the flame that came from the spark within me that's kind of like driving me to do the thing. And so, in summary, I think it's about a balance between discipline and playfulness. Basically, the way to integrate this into my life that I found is to have discipline with showing up to create the art or do the work. But then when you're actually there and you're already doing it, then do not try to force out a specific outcome or do things in a specific way. Just create, just dance, let yourself flow. And another great example of this is when I'm editing my videos, I found it very helpful this is the same thing again. Before I had too much structure, and then another time, more recently, I had not enough structure, too little. And when I had too much structure, I just it just felt like work. I was kind of forcing myself to do all these animations, and that's not what I truly love. I prefer the creative kind of, I prefer to do more work and put more work into the filming rather than the later on sitting and doing animations. That's my preference. And I found a great balance for editing, as an example, to be to have a structure. So basically, for me, it's number one, I do the rough cuts. Number two, I add the background music. Number three, I do the fine cuts, and so on and so forth. There's 6 steps. And I found it great to have this structure, but if inspiration strikes, if I get an incredible idea while I'm going through the timeline, then I will just follow that spark. I'm not gonna leave it, and I could note it down, because that's also a form of following the spark, or at least capturing the spark. You note down your idea, that's the bare minimum, ideally, we wanna be doing. But ideally, geez, we want to actually follow that spark and act on it. And so if I have an idea for a sound effect, for example, where sound effects is step 5 for me, even if I'm on step 3, if I get an incredible idea and I'm so excited by this, and I follow that. And I found, and I learned this from Rubin as well, I found that excitement is a great meter or indication that you're doing the right thing. And it's great to follow that excitement, I found. So yeah, basically it's about being a disciplined child in the end. Literally working like a disciplined child. If you can do that, you're a winner. Because that's exactly why Leonardo da Vinci, for example, was so great. He was just a disciplined child. For his entire life, he jumped... Okay, actually, never mind. He wasn't disciplined, to be fair. He just jumped from thing to thing to thing to thing. But I suppose... Could you say he had discipline? Honestly, I think that's a topic for another video, to talk about if Leonardo even had any discipline, or if it was just pure playfulness for his entire life, which it may have been. But I think until we reach that level of removing distractions from our life, in fact, there we go, that's why he was able, I think, in my opinion, to just rely on playfulness entirely, because he didn't have so many distractions in his life and obligations, like buying a car on finance, or notifications on his phone, or TikTok or whatever. He just spent his entire life pursuing what he wanted to. So yeah, I'm gonna leave things there. That's the lesson for today. Try to balance discipline and playfulness. Be a disciplined child. Until next time, I wish all the best as always. Be mega. Ciao.